Hello, my name is Jacob and I'm one of the devs working on Trepang2. In this video I'll be giving you a rundown on how to use our in-game camera tools that we've added to Trepang. Keep in mind that this is still in a very rough state and has a lot of bugs, but it's still usable to an extent. Hopefully it's enough for some of you to be able to capture some awesome moments within Trepang. Here, I'm standing inside of the safe house in our 2022 demo. To start off, in order to access the tools, you will need to have unlocked the TMod cheat. In order to unlock that cheat, you need to have finished the prologue mission, which is the first mission of the 2022 demo. Once you've finished the prologue, you can come into the main menu, go to cheats, and then enable TMod. Hit apply. To access the TMod menu, hold down Tab on your keyboard. It starts us off in the Spawn tab, which is where you can, spawn objects into the world. Here at the top, we have a few tabs that takes us to the different modes of TMod. We want to go into Camera. It's spelled with a K since I'm a silly Swede, and I hope that name isn't too confusing. Here we are in the camera interface. Note that the game automatically pauses as we enter this mode. On top of this, you no longer have to hold down Tab on your keyboard in order to keep this menu open. It turns into a toggle from here, so we can more easily work with the different settings that we have available. At first glance, you can see that there's a bunch of sliders and buttons, so it might look a little bit messy, so let's close some of these off. Covering the basics of the tool, here at the top you have your big play button. This button allows you to pause the game or play the game while you have your settings on your different cameras applied. From here, if we tab out of the interface or TMod, we can start flying around our game world as just a floating camera, basically. Don't mind the player model he's been working out. In this view, you can easily fly around and set up your different cameras or change different aspects about your cameras. From here, you can just fly around and preview the world, or if you want to capture a particular area of the game, this is a pretty good place to do that from. Also, as I'm flying around like this, I can scroll my mouse wheel to slow down the camera speed or speed it up. I can also change the FOV or the zoom of the camera by holding Control and scrolling the wheel at the same time. These are basically the basic camera settings that we have. Alright, so if we move on to the other buttons up here, the reset buttons, I highly suggest you don't click these in this build because they just freak stuff out. So yeah, don't press them. If we come down here, you can see a drop-down list, which is our camera collection. And if we add a new camera here, call it camera 1, and add it, you can see that it's been added here to the list. You can also remove the camera if you hit this button. And we want to keep autosave turned on. So if we do change any settings in here, that's automatically gonna get saved to the camera. Otherwise, we have to press this little button. Something we want to add in the future is a 3D visualization of the camera in the scene as well. But for now, it's just shown here in the list. Also, I highly suggest that you keep the default camera with no settings altered on it, just to keep it as a default camera, and then just add a new one and work on that instead. This allows you in the future to swap back to this default camera and move around the world with that selected rather than one of the cameras that you've added, so you don't accidentally change anything on that camera. As you can see here, it says camera type free, And in this demo, we have 3 different camera types available: free, follow, and dolly. Let's first look at the free camera type. Let's also open the global settings and increase the smoothness a bit here, just so we can see what's going on. All right, let's hit play and tab out. Now, if I move my mouse around, nothing actually happens. And this is because you need to hold down the left mouse button and then move your mouse in order to actually start rotating the camera around. And as you can see here, there's quite a bit of smoothing applied now. This will make a little bit more sense when we are looking at the other camera types later on. All right, so if I move around a little bit here, you can see that I can get a way smoother motion going here, which is much nicer if we're recording. I can also lower my speed a little bit just so it looks a little bit better. I can zoom in at the same time. All right. Let's add another camera here and call it camera 2. Let's move it a little bit off here to the side and lower the FOV. If I press 1 or 2 on my numpad now, I can actually swap between these 2 cameras. And you can see the FOV is transitioning when I do this, which is something that we want to change in the future to be instant instead. But for now, it's like this. You don't have to actually select the different cameras using your numpad though. You can simply just go up here into the drop down and select the camera from here too. Keep in mind that for as long as you have these cameras selected up here and you're moving around the scene, you're actually changing the position of the camera. So if you want to maintain the camera's position and fly around and do something else, swap back to the default camera and do it from here. You can also access the default camera by pressing 0 on your numpad. All right, cool. So that was free cams. Now let's take a look at the follow camera types. So let's add a new camera type here, or a new camera, sorry. And for this, let's actually spawn in one of our little friends from the spawn menu up here. All right, let's go back into camera. Let's also hide the player because he's a little bit distracting. All right, so let's make this camera a follow type. And let's also open up the whatever drop down here. This will allow us to pick a subject, which is necessary for the follow camera to work. So let's get a little bit closer here to our friend and pick the top part of his torso here. And keep in mind that if I press, for example, his upper right arm here, it's actually going to follow this body part or the lower arm or the hand, etc. So yeah, let's pick the upper torso here. Here you can see that we've been forcefully injected into this man's body and we probably don't want that. So the easiest solution to fix this is to check this use initial offset checkbox up here. And in order to actually see the result, let's hit play. This is gonna transition our camera into the correct location. Also note that that movement was really smooth due to the smoothness settings down here. So we can actually lower this a little bit just to make it a little bit more responsive. So what this actually does is that it brings us back to the original location we were at when we set the constraint up to his torso. And this is now our relative offset. And speaking of relative, we can also check the relative checkbox here just to show that off quickly. And what this does is basically it sticks sort of 1-to-1 to the body parts, different axes in the world. So it's a little bit more nauseating and noisy, but it could also provide some pretty interesting angles. Note that you don't actually have to use these checkboxes here. You can actually set up a offset here instead that gives you some extra control. And to quickly go over these offsets, you have your offset translation here, which is basically the relative location to the subject. You have your offset rotation, which is the basically just rotating the camera around its own pivot. And then you have orbit, which is rotating the camera around the subject. So if you see here, if I pivot up and down, it's actually gonna pivot from the subject instead of the camera. And here you have rotation speeds, which is a continuous motion that you can add to the camera. And this is probably gonna make me barf, so I'll have to reset this now. Sometimes this reset button actually works in this situation. If I'm rotated like this and I hit this, it actually brings me back, but don't trust these buttons. They will do funky stuff sometimes. These offsets also work if you have these options selected. Keep that in mind too. It's just that you start off with this offset. Also, just to give a practical example for the relative checkbox here that might make a little bit more sense. Let's position our camera in, say, the weapon's point of view angle here. Let's pick the subject again here and choose the hand. And then let's lower the smoothness. So here it's like kind of like sticking a GoPro to your weapon. Kind of that same effect. Keep in mind that if you have a very low smoothness number here, that might freak some stuff out in the offsets, like this. Yeah. So I suggest just kind of sticking to these values. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the follow camera type. And let's move on to the Dolly. Let's add a new camera. Call it camera Dolly. And change the type to be a Dolly type. So here you can see we get a few different buttons here. In order to edit our Dolly path, we have to go into the edit Dolly mode. It gives us this nice little frame to show us that we're in the edit mode. Once we're in the edit mode, we can hold Control and left mouse click to add new control nodes to the Dolly path. Like this. And it tries to be a little bit smart about it, so you can add nodes in between other nodes or at the ends of the path. To raise and lower these nodes off the ground, you select them by clicking on them, and then you hold the right mouse button to drag it up and down like this. You don't hold Control while doing this because that would delete the node, so just right mouse button. Now that we have a little path like this, we can add in a look at target, which is the mode that we have selected here. So for that, we hold Control and then press the middle mouse button to add that sort of node. And this is more or less the same thing, but it's specifically the look at target node. And we can raise that off the ground in the same manner as we did with these ones. Also, before we play this, we should go in and reset the smoothness here, just in case. Otherwise it might spaz out. So let's hit play. And there we go. Amazing, I know. It's a little bit janky though, a little bit rough. So we can smooth that out a little bit if we want to. Stop it. Go back into edit mode. And then if we select one of the nodes here and we hold shift and then left mouse button drag, we can edit the tangents like this. This is in screen space, so it's easier to position the camera in parallel to the direction that you want the tangents to travel in. when you're editing. Let's give this a crazy one. All right, let's try it again. Cool, and it bounces. It ping pongs from end to end. If we don't want it to ping pong and we want a little bit more, I guess, interesting. Oh, let's redo that one. Hold Control and right mouse click. We can add a few more nodes like this. And then we check the loop dolly track checkbox here, and it's gonna actually loop around on the last node and the first node, like this. Let's smooth out these tangents a little bit now too. All right, and let's put the look at target on this guy. Here we go. Can actually increase the speed here too. All right, cool. Keep in mind that even though we're in dolly mode here, we can still apply the different offsets that we have available. So we can hit play here, make it a little bit slower just so we can more easily see what's going on. Then let's add a translation offset here and maybe some rotations like this. I don't know. Also on top of this, we can do the mouse one, hold and look around offset, which is an additive offset. So if you release mouse one, it's going to reset to what the camera is trying to do by itself. Let's reset this offset just to make that a little bit more obvious again. And on top of this, we can also increase the smoothness for extra cinematic effect and control. Awesome. Let's make this showcase a little bit more interesting and add a few more friends to this party. So let's go back to the spawn menu and disable AI just so they don't freak out as soon as they see an enemy get spawned in front of them. So, all right. Let's add another friend here. And over here, let's add some horizon guys. Like this. All right, let the battle begin. Disable AI and let them have at it. Let's see if we can capture some action here. I'm moving. You're covered. All right, they decided to fire at me, so let's pause it there. Cool, that's some cool sparks and stuff, so let's see if we can make a cool fly through of this scene. Let's add a new camera and call it something silly. And this might look a little bit confusing, but when we go into edit dolly mode, it's actually gonna have the same nodes as the last dolly that we had, but yeah, let's just delete these ones and start again. If you go back, it's gonna be there, so. Let's go to our silly dolly and add a couple of nodes here. Also on top of this, we can try out the selected subject mode here and pick one of our guys that are standing here. What this will do is Basically, it turns the subject into a look at target. So when we start going down the dolly, it's going to be looking at this guy in particular. And to make this extra dramatic, let's decrease the speed to 0 and fly through. Amazing, I know. Also, just to take a look at that, we can select none for the look at mode here and play that too. And this will essentially turn our little dolly path into a roller coaster that the camera will follow. Also keep in mind that we can still look around with the additive rotation like this while we're moving on the dolly. All right, cool. That about sums it up. And just to highlight a few of the issues that we still have in this demo version that we didn't really have time to fix for this demo, that are awful, and it's just how it is for now. Sorry. So to go through them, one, if you have an offset active and you go into the free camera edit mode sort of thing, it's gonna get the camera off out into space basically. So just to show that off, if I have a translation like this and I go to fly around and edit, it just sends me straight up into space like a rocket. Number 2 is that since you can type in the values into these sliders, you can potentially give them some really strange values, which will most likely freak everything out. So I highly suggest that you don't do this and just keep it to the ranges that they provide you at this moment in time. If the camera starts spazzing out or something goes crazy, just try and reset the smoothness, the timescale, maybe hit reset camera, maybe not. Also, toggling the camera mode by clicking the tab again can actually help sort out some of the issues that may occur when you're editing the cameras. So swapping cameras and then toggling back and forth the camera mode could actually help sometimes. So all in all, there's still a bunch of issues that are present in this version of this tool, but hopefully you can still have some fun using it in this demo, and we'll make sure to improve it for the future release. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end of this video, and I hope to see some awesome moments captured using camera.